see. Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. Once again, it is Wednesday, October 7th, 2020, and we're here to talk drag racing, the number one place on the internet to talk drag racing. Where else are you going to do it? Where else are you going to do it? I don't know. Let me know if you find another place to talk drag racing with all your drag racing homies. What's going on, Billy Driscoll? What's up, Dave, Brady, Billy, Tony, checking in from Huntsville, Alabama. Actually, Huntsville Dragway, one of my favorite racetracks on the planet Earth. What's going on, Brandon? Yeah, there is a ton to talk about. Big reminder here. Click like, click share. We appreciate it. Help us spread the word, get people talking about drag racing, keep these conversations going through the week. As always, if you have a question or something that you want to talk about, something that's pressing or that you feel is important, please throw your questions in the comments and we will dive into them directly. Where is our studio now? We are coming to you live from Fort Worth, Texas. Beautiful Fort Worth, Texas. I'm enjoying what I believe to be like an extended fall. I think that's what's going on here. I think the extended fall is kind of an amazing thing that happens, I think, in Texas. I've been told about this, that you don't really get like a winter. It gets colder, but it's just like September, October weather for an extended period of time. And I am super, super duper duper excited about it, man. So what happened to Bristol in 2021? Yeah, James, you were exactly right, Lee. It's well, what a weekend drag racing. It has been a wild one, and I guess we may as well dive into the very first of our topics here. We're going to touch on this Bristol situation as we unpack the 2021 NHRA Camping World Drag Racing Series. And man, this is it's a lot, you know, there's a whole lot to kind of delve into as it relates to the schedule. First and foremost, I think this is a big time happening from the NHRA to get the schedule out at this stage in the game for next year with all the things that are up in the air and all the unknowns. I think this is really, really, really impressive. So kudos to the NHRA for getting this done. For me, starting the season in Gainesville in March, that second week of March, pretty impressive, to be honest. Decision. I think it's well knowing that there's a lot of things that will still be up in the air early next year, especially out on the West Coast. So the notion of having a race really early in the year at Pomona, that just obviously the NHRA is exercising some forward thinking and some vision, and they recognize that would be a hurdle that they don't want to have to contend with, especially with a new title right sponsor and all these things, and trying to regain some momentum from what has been a really rickety 2020. I think it's super smart to roll right into the Gator Nationals. That is an event that there's probably no better way to start the drag racing series than down there in Gainesville, Florida. That is a fan base that is, I would argue, second to none. That's a group, a collection of racing fans that just truly, truly are passionate about the sport of drag racing, come out in droves to support this event. And I think it's a fantastic way to start the year and just hopefully carry some of that momentum. I think people will be fired up to see the event come back to its normal time of the year. It's just a lot of positives as far as I'm concerned to start the season out there. We're having a couple of weird trips where we're going to have to head out west, you know, for kind of a couple of abbreviated Western swings, a couple of big happenings being that Bristol nor Chicago are on the schedule. Route 66 Raceway not being on the schedule comes as no surprise, especially considering that they announced last week that they were basically ceasing operation for at least 2021. We could probably talk about that at length. What happens next? Does it ever come back? Personally, I don't see how you reinsert yourself in the conversation after going away. But like this, with that type of facility, it's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow, a bit of a head scratcher. So anyways, the Bristol not being on the schedule was one that really just jumped out at me. That's an event that is historically extremely well attended. It's celebrated by racers. People like going there. That event, in my opinion, is something of a landmark happening on the NHRA schedule. To not see it is surprising to me. I'll tell you, I've exhausted most of my sources that would have any sort of intel on this. I've hit them all up, and no one really seems to have a great answer for me. So that's sources inside the NHRA and all around it, pro team sources, multiple track sources. No one has been able to give me a really concrete understanding as to why that event's not happening. So it's definitely a bummer. I don't think drag racing is going to be the same, to be honest, without the event on the schedule. I'm sure the NHRA will, make the most of the situation as, do what they can. But by and large, it's exciting to think that maybe we'll go back to some amount of normal, right? I mean, I think hopefully just the notion of talking about 22 NHRA stops next year is positive for me. I think it's an exciting thing. It's great for our industry. And it's, Caleb Cox Bristol, Top Fuel versus Funny Car shootout. I don't know what they're going to end up doing there, but maybe Caleb I actually didn't reach out to Caleb. He's a big part of Cruz Pedregon's Nitro Funny Car team. So he may well have some inside information that I don't have yet, but not been able to really decipher what exactly is going on. I'm getting a question here from Rick Crockett. I'm praying for a better 2021 myself, but realistically, how can the NHRA schedule without the governors from all those states approving fans in the stands? I think that this is just a case of, I don't want to say, I think this is just coming from a place of hoping for the best, of hopeful optimism. I think there are a lot of people in the country. Yeah, thank you, JT. Wishful thinking, and I think that it's logical wishful thinking. I would like to believe that a lot of these places are going to be returning to some form of normal in the months ahead of us, and I would have to believe by next summer we'll be in a much better place. But, anyways, interesting situation for sure. But again, my initial reaction to the NHRA schedule is kudos to them for getting it out at this point in time. Kudos to all these track operators, everybody that has endured 2020. This has been a butt kicking. Caleb Cox is asking if we know these are going to be back-to-back. Are we going back to 3-day events or 2 days? I have heard from a source close to the situation that many of these races will be 2-day races, but that has not been confirmed yet. So, as Sam Martin is saying, he's got some experience with track operation there in St. Louis, Missouri at Gateway, now known as Worldwide Technology Raceway. It's so tough. I mean, and it's funny, like as soon as that schedule drops, you'd be blown away, all the messages and all the calls that start happening because it has such an impact on everybody else. So everyone starts, calling and figuring out what they're going to do or going to have to move. And as Pat is saying, I would like to believe that I would assume that it's all tentative. They knew they had to get the schedule out. I'm sure this had something to do with their relationship with Camping World. Personally, I would have to imagine that Camping World wanted to know, what events, what markets they would be going to in 2021. I did notice something. I was looking at Camping World, their website, but it's cool the way Camping World's dealer locations really nicely overlay the location of NHRA national events. So I'm hoping that that's going to be a successful deal for everybody involved. 2-day races are a bummer, but better than nothing at all. I've had mixed emotions on this. I think if the NHRA were able to find a way to get 3 qualifying sessions in there for their pros, the 2-day format would be well received. I think if they could find a way to get 3 shots in there, 3 shots in there, it would probably seal the deal for a 2-day format being pretty welcome by all the pro racers. I think it's the 2 qualifying sessions that really get, I don't want to say everybody up in arms, but man, it puts a lot of pressure on these teams, especially the teams that don't have the opportunity to test between races and things like that. You are definitely asking a lot of them. So it's personally, I've actually really enjoyed the 2-day format. I've only been out to a handful of NHRA races here in 2020, but I'll tell you, the notion of just being gone Saturday and Sunday and being able to be back in the office, back at work on Monday and be able to maybe get half a day in on Friday really, really welcome change for me. Typically, these races, you're going to end up heading out on Wednesday or Thursday at the latest. And you're going to be at the track Friday, Saturday, Sunday night late. You're going to get home sometime on Monday. So getting these things a little bit more, tightening them up, I personally don't think it hurts anything at all. Dr. Ron Burgess in the house. What's going on? Interesting concept for sure. It'll be interesting to see if 22 races is financially viable, he says. Agreed as well. To be honest, I'm not so sure that this isn't the first step of an overall reduction in races across the board. We've argued many times here, right here on Facebook and YouTube, wherever you're tuning in. We've argued that a lesser schedule as far as professional races are concerned may well benefit the NHRA. I would argue that it could be very beneficial. Let's hope the damn border is open for 2021. Absolutely, man. And I want to make sure that everybody understands how crucial your involvement is as racers and fans, because the amount of red tape and jumping through hoops that people have had to do in 2020 just to go to the races, be it as a fan, be it as a sponsor, be it as a competitor, have been unbelievable. And I can't say enough about the drive and determination that exists in the sport of drag racing to continue to find a way to do this. I mean, it's silly little stuff that when I heard the NHRA was going to require masks, I thought, man, this is going to be a disaster. All these roughneck racers, they're never going to be willing to wear a mask. This is going to be a nightmare. I couldn't have been more wrong. I mean, everybody has played along as best they could, no matter where you lean on this situation, whether you believe the masks are effective or not. You show up at an NHRA national event and you see people trying to comply, trying to do whatever they need to do to make sure the races are able to continue forward. And I just don't think the racing community is maybe getting the credit they deserve for being such willing participants and willing to jump through these hoops and deal with whatever little nuances and headaches, getting their temperature taken, right? Filling out additional waivers, all these things that have had to happen in order for the sport of drag racing to continue on. It's been the racing community, that group of people, racers, crewmen and women, the families associated, the fans. It has been so incredible to see you guys fight through this the way that you have. And I hope I speak, I believe, on behalf of the entire sport of drag racing when I say thank you, because these promoters, these tracks, these sanctions, these series, they're all in deep trouble without you. YOU, all of you guys that toe to the racetrack and pack those stands. It's such a feat, man. And to do it here in 2020, when you've got to spread out and you've got to be careful and you've got to wear a mask and everybody's concerned and people are wearing welding helmets, it's just a wild time. So the racing community, you guys deserve a huge tip of the cap just for being willing to fight the good fight and find a way to the racetrack. Do you think NHRA will have a full schedule of division races? Honestly, Andrew, I haven't even, I don't know. I'm assuming yes, I really do. I think that those events are so important for tracks and so important for sportsman racers that I think that will be a really strong, a really strong likelihood, to be honest. It has, Jessica May, been rough for us Canadians. Honestly, I think about some of the people that have been cooped up for this long or restricted in some way or another for this long. And it's really, it's sad. I hate it. I hate it for our country. Scott Abramson, you're exactly right. Don't forget about the workers. That's exactly right. All these crew guys, NHRA crew guys and track officials and the people in the water box and the safety people wearing masks, already layered up, already wearing, shirt tucked in, long pants, work boots, and then having to wear a mask. I mean, it's just the effort that's being put in by human beings to make sure the sport of drag racing carries forward is so, so, so important. And honestly, I think that's a fantastic segue for the next topic, which we're going to talk a little bit about the big news that broke over the weekend, that Camping World would take over as the title rights sponsor of the NHRA Drag Racing Series, forever now known, not forever, hopefully, maybe forever, now known as the NHRA Camping World Drag Racing Series. I think this is a fantastic thing for the sport of drag racing. First and foremost, the fact that this has even happened is unbelievable. This is about the most 2020 thing I've seen happen. A freaking sponsorship get pitched and sold essentially across social media by way of Twitter. Really, really, really incredible, if you ask me. And I want to pump the brakes here because I'd like to go down the path of this Camping World conversation, but just real quick, I want to touch on a question that Matt and Angie Smith, I'm assuming this is Angie. How long do you think the racers will race for the current purse in place? I apologize for kind of bouncing around here. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, please click like, subscribe to the channel, make sure you get notifications. Same on Facebook. They have changed Facebook yet again. I'm sure you've noticed whether you're on your phone or on a laptop or desktop computer that they've changed the format of Facebook once again. So make sure that you go to the Drag Illustrated page and make sure that you're following our page and that you're getting our notifications so that you know when we're going live and when we're having these conversations, because we want you to be a part of them. It's super important. It's Matt Smith. Matt Smith, what's going on, my friend? To be honest, I don't know. And I think this is a question the NHRA has to answer immediately. I did a video about this about 2 weeks ago. It's on it's on Facebook as well as on YouTube. I think what happens next with the NHRA, one of the things they have to do immediately is give us an end date for the current purse structure. And I think they either need to identify an end date, a absolute guarantee that it ends at the end of this season and we will return to our purses as we knew them previously on January 1st, or if that's not feasible, to outline some sort of plan that are going to get us back to those purses on such and such date. I think that date certainty, which is a phrase that I was only introduced to here in 2020. I've never used it before, but I started hearing it all the time as it relates to coronavirus, right? Everybody wanted a date. They wanted this to be date certain. When are we going to be back to drag racing? When are we going to be, when are we going to be back to life as we previously knew it? The purse structure, we need some date. We need an end date, date certain. We need to know when this is going to end. It's there's not every team out here is reliant on purse money to get to the next one, to get to the next event, but it has a massive impact on all these teams. Don't think it doesn't. I do think that there's a belief that the purse money doesn't matter and that everybody out here is painfully rich and just going to the drag strip for a valid place to burn their money. And while that is the case in a handful of situations, there are plenty of people out here that, like I said, don't necessarily need that money. I'm not saying they need it to eat or feed their family, but it helps a lot. And it really helps crew members, crew men and women that are involved in running these teams and getting these trucks and trays, setting up awnings, doing all this backbreaking labor. And that money, oftentimes upon a win or a strong outing, is divvied up amongst the team. That's a ton of bonus money. And to see that go away for people that are likely underpaid as it is, to see that dollar amount go down or dwindle, it's a backbreaker, man. It's an absolute backbreaker. And again, the point that I've been trying to make that I think is maybe speaks to a larger issue is that when it becomes public knowledge, as it has, that the pro stock competitors, the Jed Coughlins and Alex Laughlin's and Greg Anderson, Erica Enders of the world are racing for $6,000, it serves only to make our sport look small. And it sucks because we are not small. Drag racing, the NHRA is the largest motorsport sanctioning body on the planet Earth. Our sport has such a massive worldwide footprint. So to allow our sports heroes, the Matt Smiths of the world, Matt and Angie Smiths in Pro Stock Motorcycle, and all the people I just mentioned in Pro Stock, and Tony Schumacher, and Jack Beckman, and Matt Hagan, and Alexis DeJoria, and Antron Brown, all these people that are these iconic, celebrated people in the sport of drag racing, for the outside world to know that they're racing for these really, really, really somewhat insignificant amounts of money serves only to make our sport look small. And it's something that has to be addressed immediately. Absolutely has to happen, man. It's What are the payouts in Top Fuel dragster compared to Pro Stock? Brad Jones, great question. Right now, the NHRA's Top Fuel and Funny Car competitors are competing for a $15,000 winner's purse, a winner's share of the purse. So for comparison's sakes, I mean, you can win considerably more money than that this weekend in Radial versus the World competition, racing 8th Mile in South Georgia Motorsports Park, in Valdosta, Georgia. Our race, the Drag Illustrated World Door Slammer Nationals, presented by SeaTech Manufacturing. Pro Stock competitors were competing for $75,000. They were competing for $50,000 in Pro Modified. We paid $7,500 to qualify in Pro Stock at the World Door Slammer Nationals. Compare that to what's going on now. Qualifying for the World Door Slammer Nationals back in March would be more lucrative financially than winning a Pro Stock race at this stage in the game here in late 2020. So it's a really, really problematic situation. And again, I don't think it's necessarily going to run everybody off. I think there are plenty of people that are so far gone, so committed that they're going to stick to it. They're going to keep racing. I don't see a bunch of these guys throwing in the towel because the purse money is not where they want it. However, it has to head the other direction. And if we ever want to be taken seriously as a motorsport or as a sport, we have to race for more money. The dollar figures have to be higher. They just do. And to kind of swivel this thing back around to the original question, what makes Camping World a good fit for the NHRA title sponsorship slot? I hope it's this. I really do. I hope it's things like this where you've got someone involved in Marcus Lemonis, and I'm no sort of Marcus Lemonis fanboy. I really don't know that much about the man, other than the fact that he is a very hands-on, modern marketing tactics-centric guy. He's a guy that's tuned in to the ways of the world here in 2020. He's tuned into optics. He's tuned into how things look. I mean, here's a guy who not too long ago was basically saying publicly that he was ready to go to jail in order to keep his gigantic American flag flying at his RV dealership somewhere in North Carolina. I would say well knowing that they were going to work this out, but he understood the optics of telling the world that he's willing to go to jail to keep his American flag flying would serve him well. So someone who understands those nuances, the optics at play, the people, how things are interpreted, I just think that it's a solid thing by and large to have someone like Marcus Lemonis involved. From a business standpoint, I talked about this briefly earlier, that the NHRA's schedule, their map of the United States, if you lay a dot down everywhere that there's going to be a national event in 2021, and then lay over top of it the Camping World RV dealership location, you'll see immediately that it's a really, really, really strong fit. We have a lot of events on the East Coast and the Southeast. They have a big footprint in the Southeast. They also have, locations across the Midwest, throughout the West Coast, up in the New England colonies. And I just think it's going to be a great fit geographically. As the NHRA has been touting for the last 2-3 weeks, this is a sport that is just goes hand in hand with camping. This is virtually every pro level drag racing team, all the way down to a grassroots weekend warrior race team, has a dually with a camper shell, has a pusher motorhome, some of them have full blown like buses, Prevost buses and big coaches like that, toter homes, motorhomes, and everything in between, living quarters and trailers. Man, it seems like a match made in heaven in that regard. My personal opinion on this is that I'm excited to have what I believe to be a forward-looking, growth-oriented company involved in the sport of drag racing. I've said this before, and I hope everybody feels the same way as I do, is that we really owe a huge debt of gratitude to the Coca-Cola Company, the Mellow Yellow, Powerade before that, Full Throttle energy drink, all these brands that Coca-Cola has used to support the sport of drag racing over the course of the last however many years, quite a while, early 2000s. I think we owe them a huge debt of gratitude, and I don't want to be that guy that beats on them or hates them for leaving. It's a tough situation, tough for a lot of people, but for me, I see Camping World, and this is weird because there's such different segments, there's such different parts of, there's such different industries, but I always felt it was somewhat problematic that Coca-Cola chose to pair NHRA Championship drag racing, which in my opinion needed a little bit of juice, needed some legitimacy, needed something to kind of elevate it status-wise in society, in sports culture, and they paired it with a brand of soda in Mellow Yellow that needed the same thing, and I guess in some instances there's opportunities to grow together, but I just really feel strongly that the NHRA at that point in time, when Mellow Yellow was introduced as the title rights sponsor, I was at the meeting they had in Gainesville a few years ago. I remember it very well, and I thought, man, I could probably buy this and pitch it to someone else if Mellow Yellow was becoming the title rights sponsor of stock car racing, right? And we were going to do this whole Days of Thunder, Cole Trickle thing. Maybe we could make it make sense and kind of get everybody excited about it and play to the nostalgia of it. Maybe, right? And I'm just saying, maybe. There's a jet flying over. I apologize. It's extremely loud. But to pair the NHRA, which needed some oomph, right? We needed something that would kind of propel us up to the proverbial next level everyone's always talking about. I just don't think Mellow Yellow was a fantastic fit. I think Diet Coke or Coca-Cola, even Powerade would have been a little bit more significant. I mean, you see Powerade, direct competitor to Gatorade, top tier brand. It's a top shelf product. That's what drag racing needed, in my opinion. And the Mellow Yellow thing just never really resonated with me personally. Again, though, I'm not trying to make light of the money that was spent, the effort that was made. I'm very appreciative of it. I think everybody in drag racing should be very appreciative of any company that has come along over the course of time and invested their hard-earned dollars in the sport of drag racing. Moving on to the Camping World thing, what I see Camping World doing is I see Camping World as the title rights sponsor of the NASCAR Truck Series. They have been since like the middle 2000s. They transitioned that sponsorship a couple of years ago to introduce one of their new brands, Candor RV Center or whatever it's called. But they are returning in 2021 as the title rights sponsor of the NASCAR Truck Series. I think we're going to get some guilty by association, right? Just to be, again, thrust into the conversation with NASCAR. I'm no sort of NASCAR fan. I literally couldn't name, I would struggle to name 3 current NASCAR drivers right now. I care so little about NASCAR that it's painful. And it's not because I'm a mean person or whatever. I'm happy for them, but I'm just a drag racing guy, right? So, however, I'm also not naive enough not to, be well aware that NASCAR is here and drag racing is here, right, in the grand scheme of things. And I'm excited personally to get to see our sport enjoy a little bit of guilty by association, right? I want to see us mentioned, just the opportunity to see the sport mentioned in the same breath as NASCAR events and NASCAR happenings. I'm also hopeful that the Camping World team can apply some of what they've learned in the NASCAR world to their activation, to the activation of their sponsorship here in drag racing to make it more valuable and more impactful for them. And I believe that that's a group of people. I do not know them. I do not know Marcus Lemonis, but from watching a little bit of his TV show, seeing how he behaves online, I see him as being a guy that's going to get the most out of this investment. He's going to wring this investment for every possible eyeball or exposure that is out there. So for every possible lead generation. So I'm very excited to see a company that appears to be tuned in to marketing and sales in 2020 get involved with the sport of drag racing. I've also seen them do a technically savvy things. Right now, Camping World is the sponsor of a virtual concert series where they're bringing big name bands, Martina McBride. I mean, it's very country centric. I saw they're going to have Ricky Skaggs, or I think last night they had Ricky Skaggs from the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, man. I mean, you and me want to go fishing in the dark, right? Fly around, count the stars. Right? Maybe. I mean, they're having big time bands participate in this Camping World virtual concert series. And again, I see that, and I don't care if you're a country music fan or not, you have to see that as, man, this is forward thinking marketing. How can we put our name on something? How can we deliver some sort of entertainment value to the world and do it in a safe, responsible fashion, amidst this coronavirus pandemic. So I see they have the title rights sponsorship of a stadium in Orlando. They play some sort of bowl game there. Again, it's not a drag race, so I don't really pay attention, but nonetheless, Camping World is going to be a fantastic fit for the sport of drag racing. This is something that I urge you not to sleep on, to support. Go out, and if you're an RV enthusiast, if make sure that that's Camping World's getting your business. I urge you to let them see the needle move. That's so important for these companies to see an uptick, to see movement, to see conversation, to see some sort of interest and enthusiasm about what they're doing. And I'm here to tell you that knowing nothing about Camping World's inner workings, caring very little about any of their political whatever, this is a great opportunity for the sport of drag racing, and we need to make the most of it. That's my opinion. And it's my sincere hope that Marcus Lemonis is able to force some of his ideas and input on the NHRA. I think that he is a guy that would argue that the purse money is not high enough. I think that he would recognize that. I think he would recognize the optics of it. I think he would recognize that those things have to be in sync. What we've seen happen, in all fairness, and I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but what we've seen happen is we've seen the expense of drag racing run a million miles away from the money that's at stake when it comes to winning and losing, right? The purse money, it pales in comparison to the dollars, right, that are spent or required to be spent to be successful at a high level in the sport of drag racing. And I think that if Marcus Lemonis, the CEO and chairman of Camping World and Good Sam and the other associated brands that fall under that umbrella, I think that he will be able to immediately see that these things don't line up, that the cost has run away, right, from the purse money that's at play. And again, if you want to be taken seriously, if you want to be talked about on ESPN, if you want to be talked about on Fox Sports, if you want those things to happen, right? If you want those things to happen, the dollar sign, the numbers got to be bigger, man. Right? I mean, rappers spend this much money, $15,000 on one night in the club. Right? And I mean, Alexis DeJoria's got to go win 4 rounds of racing after 2 to 4 rounds of qualifying to be in the hunt to potentially win $15,000. And it just does not serve our sport in any way, shape, or form for the numbers to be so low. It's something that has to be addressed sooner rather than later. But again, to kind of bookend that part of the show, I will say that Camping World is going to be a fantastic thing for the sport of drag racing. I personally extend my sincerest thanks and appreciation to the team at Camping World. I'm excited to hopefully have the opportunity to work with them at some point, at least network and know them, and share with them my appreciation for their really kind of coming in and saving the day. I don't really see, it's such a unique thing that in that moment of need, right, where the NHRA finds themselves kind of hat in hand, what's going to happen next, via the internet. I mean, a lot of bad happens. The internet, in my opinion, is this polarizing thing. There are good, but this is a fantastic reminder that good things do happen, and social media can create positive happenings in our world and right here in the sport of drag racing. So, Wes, former Pro Stock champ Tanner Gray runs in the Camping World Truck Series. So I do know one. It's great to know. Very, very, very good to know. Thanks for the input, John. I was actually, I had completely spaced that. Whenever someone leaves the sport of drag racing to go circle track racing, I don't know how to say it, man. You're dead to me. No, I'm just joking. I like Tanner Gray. I have a very memorable Tanner Gray story, but I'm not going to tell it right now. But I'll save it for the future. Tanner and I had a really fun night one night. Great guy, great kid, and one hell of a drag racing driver. I'm curious to see, says Brian McCaddy, about the cross promotion that will exist between the Truck Series and NHRA both being backed by Camping World. It might be smart advertising money instead of buying commercial time next year. Could be very well cheaper to invest in title sponsor rights in NHRA instead of buying advertising time otherwise. When you talk about 550, 600 hours of programming the NHRA is going to receive in 2021, I would say that you're making some sense, right? I mean, if you think about what it would cost to buy that kind of airtime just in a time buy type of situation or commercial buying type of situation, it would be otherworldly expensive to buy that much airtime on Fox Sports or Fox Sports One. So, man, I just honestly think that this is a huge bang for their buck, man. If any sort of okay, so how good is the deal? Asked Billy Anderson. The Coca-Cola deal was exposed in the lawsuit, and I think Camping World had a advantage in negotiations. There's no chance. I mean, there's no way to sell it other than the fact that NHRA was kind of negotiating from a powerless position, in my opinion. I think that they've got to know the value of what they do. They've got to know the value of the NHRA. They've got to know the value of that fan base, that audience that they have developed over the course of 60 plus years. You have to know, and you have to have some balls, and you have to have some confidence. But there's no doubt that on the heels of this big bad breakup, a lawsuit, all this kind of negative news regarding the purse and all these kind of financially driven issues, you have to admit that the NHRA wasn't exactly in a great position, or certainly not a position of power when it comes to negotiating their next sponsorship deal. However, my sources indicate that this deal resembles the Coca-Cola deal. I've actually heard a couple people tell me that the numbers are higher. Again, I don't know if they're high enough because I think they were pretty low, but I honestly think that this is a big bang for the buck. There's no doubt in my mind that Camping World is going to get their money's worth with the NHRA. There's no doubt. If you just look at the amount of sales and service business there's going to be at the pits of again, I've talked about this. I love throwing this number out here, and I don't know why it's stuck in my head the way that it has, but 891 race cars on the grounds at Lucas Oil Raceway in Indianapolis, Labor Day weekend for the U.S. Nationals. 891. How you could be someone in the camping world, that was a odd play on words or whatever. I didn't mean to. Right? If you're Camping World, you can't look at an event like the U.S. Nationals and not see dollar signs and not see big opportunity, fertile soil, new people that are loyal to a fault, that are engaged, that are passionate, that are invested, that use the equipment too. Because that's another thing. These are people that go out and use their RVs, go out and use their campers, go out and use their coaches and toter homes and motorhomes. These things are getting beat up and down the highways and byways of America all across the country every weekend, and that's going to keep your service centers busy, and that's going to keep your upgrades, your trade-ins, all these things. This is a great thing for Camping World, a great thing for the sport of drag racing. Yeah, I mean, Randy Curtis right here. What's up, Randy? Good to talk to you, man. It was good to see you this past weekend. Randy's exactly right. I mean, they see sales opportunities. I do think that there is a philanthropic kind of play here. I mean, Marcus Lemonis, Camping World, they're going to look like heroes. And it's hard to put a value on that. It's hard to put a price tag on that. I mean, there are people in our sport that will literally sell their bus, sell their coach, sell their motorhome, and go buy one from Camping World just to say they did it, just to tell you or tell some of their friends that I went and traded my stuff in and went straight there and bought, a camper to show them I support them. And Caleb Cox, and I'm diverting a lot here, I apologize. I love interacting with you guys so much that I read the comments and I can't help but want to talk about it because that's what we're here to do. This is the #1 place on the internet to talk about drag racing. So what is this message?
Get back on track, Wes.
Oh, sorry. I do want to touch on this, though, real quick. Caleb Cox is saying Marcus should have an at-track camper service in the Midway. That's a great idea. I can't tell you the number of times we've put fuel filters on a generator or tried to get one to start. All these, I mean, those things are complex machines, and man, they have a lot of things that break on them, and Camping World would be wise to have some sort of service center on the grounds at every NHRA national event for the foreseeable future. So, next question, what's the right move for the NHRA regarding pro stock from STL? This was a pretty big deal, in my opinion. We had we had a really scary weekend as far as the NHRA Midwest Nationals in St. Louis was concerned. the stars and cars of the National Hot Rod Association rolled into Gateway Raceway, Worldwide Technology Raceway, just across the Mississippi River from downtown St. Louis, and put on as best a show as they could, with all sorts of obstacles in their way. We had two really scary crashes in the nitro ranks, with Leah Pruitt fortunately walking away from a really scary top end accident. Well, about mid track, the car broke in half. She went airborne. Fortunately, the cockpit, the canopy set up on that Don Schumacher dragster kept her safe, and she was able to return home to her friends and family. Alexis DeJoria also had a very scary engine explosion that saw her, I think I saw her make a post on Facebook, 14 or 15 lateral Gs. Incredible G-force that her body and that car experienced. Again, fortunately, she was able to walk away, return to her family, her daughter, and live to race another day. We also saw Kenny Delco and Phil Oakley experience very scary crashes. Philip Oakley in Top Dragster, which is a very unusual situation to see a car such as that get out of shape on the top end. Just the rear end of the car completely wash out from underneath of it and send him into the wall at a high rate of speed. Again, he was able to walk away from that accident. Kenny Delco, similar situation in NHRA Pro Stock. And there was a slew of scary situations in NHRA Pro Stock that prompted the NHRA to pump the brakes on their Pro Stock competition for the weekend. They were a couple of pairs into the second round of eliminations when they decided to put the brakes on and again live to race another day and postpone the completion of the Pro Stock portion of the race until a future event. And there's a lot of discussion going on in the background right now as to what is the correct path here. There are two schools of thought that are, not surprisingly, polarizing completely opposite ends of the spectrum. There are people that would argue that the NHRA should pick up where they left off, two pairs into the second round of eliminations at Dallas, and continue on and run that race to completion, whatever cars were left in the second round, and determine a winner. There is another school of thought. There is another group of people that would like to see the entire race reran. I'm curious if you guys have a strong opinion. I'd love to see it. That's what this operation is for, my friends. That's what this Wednesday afternoon chat is for. I want to know personally what you think about this. So, do they rerun the entire Pro Stock race, start it over, 1 versus 16, and so on and so forth, or do they pick up where they left off? There are a lot of people that believe that the race it wasn't fair the way that it was shaking out. We had all sorts of issues with the track. It was being prepped after virtually every run, trying to get these cars to stick to the top end of the racetrack. It was creating all sorts of issues, extremely cold conditions, unusually cold conditions. There in St. Louis this past weekend, a perfect storm, if you will. The NHRA goes out and throws down a bunch of glue on the racetrack, which is helpful for the Pro Stock cars, but not for the Top Fuel and Funny cars, which are out there ripping up the track and tearing up the racetrack because there's so much glue on the top end of it. We've talked about this a lot, and it's a conversation that's had frequently when you're talking about pro mod and drag radial, right? How many times right here on this show have we discussed the nuances of racing a pro mod car versus a radial tire car and the different track prep that is required? The same situation exists for Top Fuel and Funny car versus Pro Stock and Pro Mod, right? Those Top Fuel and Funny cars have so much downforce and generate so much downforce on the top end of the racetrack that putting a ton of glue down there serves only to chunk tires and tear up racetracks, right? Whereas the exact opposite essentially exists for Pro Stock and Pro Mod, where they need the track tight down there on the big end. They need that glue because they don't have those big wings. They don't have a Top Fuel style wing. They don't have those big wings like a funny car does. So it's very, very, very important to have that top end of the track glued adequately. So I'm not sure, to be honest. I think that this is one of those things that is Larry Gilstrap, if you don't run half of the event, start over. To be honest, I can make a pretty solid argument for starting over. I think that being that we are, and it's funny, Brady Russell chimes right in immediately with finish the race. Pick up where they earned the spot. Why waste the weekend, says Dave Magnuson. It's tough because I think if you're one of the teams that lost, and felt like you lost because you were racing on a subpar, an uneven playing field, it's a tough pill to swallow, especially at this stage in the game, because we can't lose sight of the fact that we're down to the wire. We've got a handful of races left. A champion will be crowned in 2020 in the 2020 drag racing series. And I think that it's having this, I struggle with it because it's we've had so many asterisk moments here in 2020 already, right? We've had to swallow the pill so many different times that it's tough to see it have to happen again. However, I do remember a time when marginal track conditions were kind of just part of it, right? Oh, the track's junk, right? I mean, that at one point in time, that was a very common occurrence in the sport of drag racing. I mean, it was just, the track's junk. The track's always junk here. The track's always junk there. It's very tough. And I'm sure that if I'm a racer that ran a freaking 650 or whatever in the left-hand lane and won, and the right-hand lane, got loose or whatever, it's very, very difficult. And I do not envy the NHRA's position on this. I think that there's no chance that they're going to satisfy everyone. And if it impacts the championship, I guess it impacts the championship. I would hate to see some weird wrinkle like this affect the outcome of a championship, right? I think that that's the thing that a lot of people are kind of looking at, is that these are rounds that are going to directly impact the world championship. And Bob Caldwell is saying right here, left lane was much better, one lane racetrack. But I guess, could it not be argued that that's often the case, that it's often a one lane racetrack, that it's, I've heard, whether the sun hits one side of the track sooner than it hits the other side of the track because of the way the tower's position or the way the grandstands are, I've heard every imaginable one lane's better than the other lane argument over the course of my life spent here in drag racing. So it's a really, really, really tough one, but I'm anxious to see Matt Angie Smith. Yeah, what I'm wondering what Jim Howard here is saying that he would rerun it. Like I said, I can make an argument either way. Is there not an argument that could be, man, if you're Kenny Delco and you wrecked and then they throw the race out, God, that would be a tough pill to swallow, right? Like, man, I'm out here, I just tore all this stuff up, barrel rolled this race car, and now you're saying that it didn't, none of it even matters. It was for nothing. They're going to throw the race out. Maybe that is a small price to pay. I mean, he was able to walk away from it, and this is how they were able to. It's a tough one, right? Let the Pro Stock round winners decide. The obvious thing is they would say continue, but if the guy really feels it was unfair, then I believe they will rerun. I don't know. I would agree that they won under under the same conditions. The track was bad. It's such a tough one, man. And these are the moments when the NHRA earns their paycheck, right? And I just hope that. Michael Smith saying here in the comments, isn't that why lane choice is so important? Absolutely. And I appreciate so much all this input. This is what keeps this show going. This is those comments and these thoughts and these opinions. This is what has to happen in the sport of drag racing. We have to have these open conversations about things that are happening in our sport if we ever want things to improve. Same qualifying order, no qualifying passes, and start over. Rob, I do believe that is one of the outcomes or one of the situations that's being proposed. I don't know what's going to end up happening, but I know that there is a lot of talk going on in the background. So if you guys ever want some inside baseball, I'll tell you that's a big conversation that's going on in the sport of drag racing right now. A lot of emails being sent, a lot of phone calls being had, a lot of texts being thrown around, people trying to posture for their side or the other. And it's going to be interesting to see what they end up deciding to do. It's going to be a real interesting one. Was there any talk at the track of finishing the race 8th mile? Not that I'm aware of, Johnny. And this is funny that you mentioned that, because that is something that crossed my mind as it was happening. I remember back, I can't remember, I think it was 2008. that the IHRA rolled into San Antonio and had a very similar situation where the track actually started to crumble under the force of Top Fuel and funny cars going down the track. And overnight, they repaved the racetrack overnight from the 8th mile on, and attempted one pair to start the race back up, and ultimately decided to switch the race from quarter mile to 8th mile, which I believe to be the only time that it's happened in history, more than likely. And gosh, that was a wild scene to be a part of. I'll never forget hearing like the white noise of equipment, right? Like I could just hear heavy equipment, and I'm like, what the hell are they doing out on the racetrack? And I went out there, and they've got all these lights on, and they're repaving the racetrack. Like the smell of fresh asphalt is in the air. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, what? They're repaving the racetrack overnight. This is insane. And yeah, man, they swung the bat and missed, and ended up being forced to, that was a wild deal. Jeff Miles is talking about. It was such a wild scene, something I've never. So I was curious, Johnny, to go back to Johnny Placino's point. I was curious if that would be suggested, but I don't think that's something that the NHRA has done yet, and I think it's something that they would likely avoid if they could. So with that, let's move into our open Q&A portion of the show, and we will talk about whatever you guys want to talk about for the next 10 minutes or so. And there was a couple of good ones up. Oh, okay. Complete repave on Friday at the 83 Cajun Nationals, says Kevin McKenna. I'm curious. It's a very wild scene when these type of things happen. So I think that what we have to. There's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Is I go back. There was a moment that happened in St. Louis that really struck me, and it was when Chris McGaha was pulling his son into the beams. And I saw it was a great shot. The Fox Sports team did a great job of getting cameras on this happening. And it was Chris McGaha looking at his son, making eye contact with his son, who's behind the wheel of a pro stock car, looks down, points at his head, and he's saying, think. And for me, I don't know that the gravity of that situation, I interpreted that, and what I believe to be the correct way. This is very dangerous, son, and it's going to be up to you to make the right decision inside of the next 7 seconds. The right decisions that will see you either pull the parachutes and coast safely to a stop, or slide to a stop, grind to a stop on your lid or on your door, or send this car spinning on its lid. And that moment to me just struck me. Like it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I don't think this is talked about enough. We talk about how impressive these cars are. We talk about the mechanical marvel that is an 11,000 horsepower engine. We talk about the clutches, and we talk about torque converters, and we talk about timing and ignition timing and fuel systems and all these advanced electronics that are on the car. But we do not speak enough about the courage of the men and women that are strapping into these cars, and their willingness to put themselves in harm's way to get this job done, to win this drag race. And I look at the McGahas, and I look at Alex Laughlin and Jed Coughlin and all these guys that went out there and had to act to save their car and themselves from crashing. I mean, we got to see several examples of this. We're not talking enough about it. The fact that Leah Pruitt will ever get back in a Top Fuel car, makes her a hero. Should make her a hero, every single one of us. The fact that Alexis DeJoria would ever get back in a Nitro funny car after what happened to her, 14, 15 G's of lateral side-to-side movement, the fact that she would get back into one of these cars is unbelievable. It is, I can't say enough about it. It doesn't get talked about enough. We talk about everything else, but we don't talk about the badasses that these people are. So few people would do it. So few people would do it. Yet we're out here racing for $15,000, scratching and clawing for a little bit of mainstream attention and affection. This is just, it's so important. And I'm telling you, I go back to that moment of Chris McGay, hey, looking at his son in the eyes and telling him, this is on you, buddy. This is on you. Think. You're going to make the difference. And to send that young man down through there, a very, very green driver, rookie, very fresh face out here, to send him down there, just the balls and the courage that it took on everybody involved's part, it doesn't get talked about enough. And what also doesn't get talked about enough is the people that are able to perform so perfectly in that situation, right? The aforementioned Jed Coughlin that knew his car was spinning 300, 400 feet into the run, could feel it spinning the tires, right? Felt the car start to get away from, get out from under him, gets the, on those pro stock cars and most of these NHRA cars, pushing the button to get the chutes out early and save that race car and straighten it up and possibly save his life. That skill and that precision and that timing and that moment, those reflexes, it does not get talked about enough. But above all else, these men and women are the most courageous people. It is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And I just don't think we talk about it enough. I really don't. I really, really, really don't. Man, I will tell you, this is a rumor. Larry Gilstrap is asking Tony Stewart, lucky man, if he starts drag racing. Abso-freaking-lutely, man. My views on Tony Stewart are this could be a huge thing for the sport of drag racing. Again, we need to borrow this man's fame. We need to borrow this man's fame and fan following. We need to leverage the audience that he has developed over the course of many years in sprint car racing and NASCAR racing, obviously, with tremendous success. Tony Stewart has a massive fan following. He has a huge network of companies and people that are involved with him in one shape or another. He has a racing series. He's got multiple race teams. He's involved in all sorts of different things. And I think getting him in Top Fuel drag racing, it's something that can't happen soon enough. I've been, when one of the Busch boys decided to go pro stock racing, I think when Kurt Busch decided to go pro stock racing for a race or two many moons ago, I thought this was such a huge opportunity for the sport of drag racing. They get so much attention and they're able to demand so much attention, these NASCAR superstars, that drag racing could only benefit from their involvement. And I think if we can get someone like Tony Stewart in a Top Fuel car on a consistent basis, I think that will be the most important part of it. Is that I would completely understand if he didn't want to commit to a 22, 23 race tour, but if he could commit to 8, 10, 12 races, even a limited schedule, it would be beneficial for the sport of drag racing. There is no doubt in my mind. If we could just pull a few fans, a small percentage of fans from stock car racing or sprint car racing, or get them to come out to a race near them, it could be huge for us. And if we were able to position ourselves where Tony Stewart could become some sort of quasi spokesperson for the sport of drag racing and just go on the record talking about courage, talking about the technology, talking about the competition, talking about the atmosphere, talking about all the things that we know as high spots in the sport of drag racing, if we could have someone like Tony Stewart out there saying these things, singing the praises, speaking the gospel of drag racing, it can only benefit the sport. It would be fantastic. He's a guy who raced with his shirt, or with his heart on his shirt sleeve. He was an emotional guy, a charismatic character, polarizing. People loved him, loved to hate him, loved to see him win, loved to see him lose. And I think that having someone like that in the mix, a real deal professional race car driver, it could be very beneficial for the sport of drag racing. Randy, I'm doing great, man. Thank you for asking. Yeah, dude, Sam Smith late to the party a little bit. We've got a barn burner of a weekend ahead of us. It's kind of incredible when you go to think about how much drag racing is going on this weekend. We have the Throwdown in T-Town coming up at Tulsa Raceway Park. We've got obviously Sweet 16 3.0 going to butt right up against No Mercy 9, I believe, down at South Georgia Motorsports Park. Donald Long putting on his week-long 10 days of duck. that, man, then we've got the PDRA rolling into Galop Motorsports Park out there in pro mod territory out there in the Carolinas, where they always get a big crowd and a big turnout of cars. Let's just start, I guess, with PDRA real quick. Murder Tundra, we'll touch on that. Oh yeah, Keith Berry in the comments here. I actually just hung up the phone with Keith not too long ago. Big news out of Darlington Dragway as Wostock will return next spring with the Sticky Mafia member himself, Jimmy Bradshaw, back at the helm as far as track prep and race operation is concerned. And he's also making an announcement that I think it's already public. He may have just made it public that Woo Fest will be taking place next fall at the House of Hook, Carolina Dragway, out there in Aiken, South Carolina. So very, very exciting developments for Keith Berry and company, my buddy Russell Miller, and everybody else out there in Darlington, South Carolina. PDRA, man, I don't want to jinx him or put more pressure on him, but I definitely see Johnny Placino with a full head of steam, a lot of momentum. I would not at all be surprised to see him continue his reign of terror over the PDRA Extreme Pro Stock division. I see that as one of drag racing's true unsung heroes. That class, that type of drag racing is boom. It's just, they're killing it, man. I just think that it's a great class. Got a huge shout out to JR Carr, Frank Gugliotta. That entire JR Carr team went 6-17 in a Mount Motor Pro Stock exhibition at the NHRA National Event St. Louis last weekend. 4:02 with a 1 to the 8th mile. Mammoth performance, just incredible performance by JR Carr and company. And just if you think about it and you really wrap your head around, it wasn't that long ago that a 617 would have qualified you in Pro Mod. And now you've got JR Carr out there doing it with an 800 some odd inch naturally aspirated, gasoline burning, manually shifted, clutch operated door slammer. Just really, really, really impressive. And he will certainly cause problems for Johnny Placino this coming weekend at Galop Motorsports Park. I think there are plenty of good cars in the Mount Motor Pro Stock world right now. I also look at PDRA Pro Boost and Pro Nitrous to continue being the barn burners that they've been throughout 2020. I think Tommy Franklin's going to head into this race with a lot of with a chip on his shoulder going out in the final round to Jim Halsey, his kind of back and forth competitor in the Pro Nitrous ranks. I think Jim Halsey has a point to prove. I think Jim Halsey, Eric Davis, Kathy Kraus, that whole group, Brandon Schweitzer, they also will not rest until they are able to score a PDRA Pro Nitrous World Championship. So I think that's going to be a barn burner. You've got Jay Cox, who you can never sleep on, ever, ever, ever. Can never sleep on him and that Rick Jones built 69 Camaro and Charlie Buck's power. And it's just, again, I point at Pro Nitrous and I go, man, this is a fantastic example of a real high spot in the sport of drag racing. Just the different chassis builders, the different engine builders, the different tuners, Pat Busey, Sonny Leonard, Charlie Buck, Billy Albert. There's just so many people involved in that class, and there's so many characters, and it's really cool to see. Chris Reaney, can't sleep on Chris Reaney right now either. Ton of really fast cars in Pro Nitrous, so I'm excited to see how that shakes out. I would not at all be surprised to see the Pro Charger cars continue to kind of run at the front and or dominate the Pro Boost scene. There are clearly some roost blower cars that are in the hunt that can go fast and can win races. But man, if you look at these Pro Charger cars, what the Galop Motorsports team is doing, John Strickland and Kevin Rivenbark, these guys are killing it. Jason Harris, what's his name? Gosh darn it. John Camp. Johnny Camp. I mean, there's just so many hitters over there. Randy Weatherford. I mean, I just mentioned all Pro Charger cars, all bad fast, all capable of winning anywhere they go. So going to be very excited. Our own Mike Carpenter and his dad Charles are headed out to the PDRA race this weekend. I want to wish them well and a lot of luck as they bust out the old 68 Camaro and do battle in Pro Nitrous. I think that they're going to look to set a career best this weekend, so that'll be exciting. I hope they're able to dip down into the 360s. I know that's kind of what they've got on their mind, and I would not be at all surprised to see them do it. So looking to what do we got else? Murder Tundra. Oh,
Got a question up about the Door Slammer.
Touch on the Door Slammer Nationals. Door Slammer Nationals, the World Door Slammer Nationals, presented by C-Tech Manufacturing, builder, maker of the finest cabinets in the history of the known universe, fully capable of outfitting your race car trailer with everything you could possibly need to be a badass drag racer. And some just all-around great people will return to Orlando Speed World Dragway, the house that Ozzy Moya built, and Maria, she helped. Ozzy and Maria Boya built down there next to Disney World. We will return next March 2021, and we will put on the biggest drag race in the history of the known universe. This will be the biggest independent drag race ever. Mark it, book it. If you have not arranged your flight, weekend before the Gator Nationals, we will be down there burning the state of Florida to the ground. There will be nothing left. They will likely cancel the Gator Nationals again. If I had to guess, they'll just cancel it again because there will be nothing left for anybody to prove after the World Door Slammer Nationals. So obviously Sweet 16 3.0 coming up this weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing a bunch of people down there, seeing all my radial tire, small tire pals down at South Georgia Motorsports Park. Looking forward to seeing Donald and Stephanie and the whole gang, Lenko, Billy Driscoll, all my buddies down there, Wade, Mooney, everybody that's involved with the program. Looking forward to seeing everybody down at Valdosta this weekend. I think they're going to, weather permitting, it's going to be a barn burner down there. I'm sure Donald's going to get everybody 75 rounds of qualifying if he has the chance, and it'll be a show. It's going to be there will be no greater war of attrition in the history of outlaw drag racing than the next week. The people that still have engines and still have money at the end of Sweet 16 will definitely be, in a good position to win no mercy, man. We are going to see people blowing stuff up, swinging for the fences left and right. It's going to be a very interesting 7-day or so stretch in the world of small tire drag racing. Dan Ferguson asks, why is it that every time a Pro Mod series allows a new combination, they give them too much instead of not enough? We've seen it in many organizations not singling any out. That is a fair question. It's and it's really interesting. I mean, if you look at like NHRA, I think is one of the greatest examples with the inclusion of turbo cars. I mean, they had so little rules on these cars when they first started showing up, so few rules. It was insane, to be totally honest with you. And now to look at how far they were. I mean, when those cars first showed up in the NHRA, there was no boost controller. Now, not only is there a NHRA mandated boost controller, but there have been numerous iterations of the boost limit. So now, I mean, when they came into the class, I mean, God only knows how much boost they were making. Now they're limited to 33 pounds of boost. So it's a very, very interesting situation. I mean, I think that the example that Dan is kind of leaning on here right now is just the performance of these Pro Charger cars. It's tough, and it's so hard to get good data because you're leaning, the NHRA and any rules maker is likely leaning on teams, right, that are going out and testing and developing these things behind the scenes at test sessions and at offshoot races around the country. And unless you have them showing you like their hand, which so rarely happens, it's really hard to build the rules around it. It's a tough thing, man. I think that a lot of poker is played by the people that are involved with this stuff, and you really can't blame them for it, right? Because they do this for a living. In many cases, they do it. They're trying to establish some sort of competitive advantage. So if they have one, they're certainly not going to be open about telling people what's wrong, or why they're doing it or how they're being so successful. So it's a really, really tough deal. We also have the Great American Guaranteed Million coming up this weekend. It's already underway. Britt Cummings event at Memphis International Raceway, another historic happening. It's hard to imagine that another $1 million drag race is happening here in 2020, considering everything that's gone on. Holy freaking crap. I mean, look at the CJ Copo deep. Yeah, absolutely, Sam. And Kenneth Winkler is exactly right. Bruder Brothers make lots of power with Pro Charger. This is not, I think we've all been kind of ignoring or maybe glossing over the potential of the Pro Charger combination for quite a while. I think back to like what Mark Mickey was able to do in Outlaw 10-5, and then what Mark Mickey was able to do in NMCA Pro Street. This isn't unheard of, right? I mean, there were guys that were struggling to maybe keep up with the pace that the evolution was happening in pro mod racing, but this doesn't surprise me at all. And I think the NHRA specifically is going to have to do something to maybe curtail a complete and total acceptance of this thing where everybody's running one. However, this is the exact same stuff that we saw from twin turbo cars, right? What we were all saying that before long, it's going to be nothing but twin turbo pro mods. And now we're to the point where there's one, right? So I think we just have to know that these things come and they go, and things become popular, and things become trendy, or things become racer friendly. They get adopted. And yeah, man, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. Logan Yelton asked, what's up, Logan? I hope you are doing well. Yeah, Greg, you're right, man. And if you remember the red Camaro, prior to that, the black Camaro, their black Outlaw 10-5 car was a world beater with a Pro Charger. So anyways, Logan Yelton asked, will we see Frankie Taylor's 348 fall to a radial car by the end of No Mercy? I think it is most definitely in jeopardy. I think it is in jeopardy for the first time. I don't think it's going to happen. Let's just Murder Tundra. Do you think somebody's going to go 340s?
Nope.
I don't either. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't know that everybody sometimes fully comprehends the number of stars and moons that have to align, right? Like how many things have to be perfect to get to a 350 with a 4 or a 350 with a 2, but to go to a 348 400s or whatever, or 2, excuse me, that's a lot. It's a lot. So I personally don't see it happening this weekend. I would say that it's probably more so in jeopardy right now than ever before. We've never been closer, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen inside of the next 10 days. Let's say that. And maybe I'm eating my words. Next Wednesday, it'll be fun to talk about it if it does happen. But I personally don't see it happening. Craig Arlanes. Wes, what's keeping you from building a car and going racing? Nothing, man. Honestly, I've been in business for myself now for 15 years. October, actually, here in 2020 marks 15 years since we started Drag Illustrated magazine. And I've really just been focused on building a business. I knew that the level that I want to race at personally, I want to run pro mod or pro stock is what I would like to do. And I have every intentions of doing it. I will do it. I would like to run some Mountain Motor Pro Stock races or some NHRA Pro Stock races, but I also knew that I wanted to do it on my terms, and I didn't want to be beholden to anyone or anything like that in order to get it done. I didn't want to have to sell my soul. I didn't want to have to, and I knew that the most important thing was to continue building my business. So at some point in the future, I could afford to race at the level that I want to. And that day's coming very soon. I really would like to maybe dabble a little bit in 2020 with some heads up door slammer racing. I don't ever really intend to race at a full-time level or anything like that. But I would like the opportunity to go out and throw my hat in the ring and do a little bit of drag racing. I have, some streetcar stuff that I play in or whatever, but we've got some work to do to get, or I've got, there's still some time left. I still liken myself a young man, but there's a lot that I want to accomplish in the sport of drag racing. And I just wanted it to be, I want to be able to go racing. I don't want to be out here beg, borrowing, and then stealing to get to the next race. And I totally understand, and I support and applaud anybody who does that. I'm not raining on anybody's parade or shortchanging anyone's hustle, but I knew that the pathway that I wanted to take to drag racing was to build a very successful business or a slew of very successful businesses. I'm lucky to have, well, at times I don't feel lucky, but I've got 3 businesses right now. And I'm just focused 100% on growing these companies providing a solid foundation for my family, making sure that my kids have everything that they need and want. My wife has everything that she needs and wants. My employees are well taken care of. Everybody that's involved in this project is well taken care of. And whenever I get to the point that I feel that it makes sense, I will go drag racing. And if anybody wants to go drag racing, let me know. If you want to go pro level drag racing, I'm all in. So I would love the opportunity to, be a spokesperson for a company, to be a brand ambassador. I'm lucky to have gotten to do a lot of that work in my life. And yeah, man, I know the sacrifice. I've done it my whole life. I've been around drag racing my entire life. This is all I've ever done. And I know what it takes, and I've seen it and I know the struggle, and I just want to be able to do it. Mark Dowdy. I own Kingsridge Media, which is a rapidly growing video production company and digital media agency. And I'm involved with Elite High Performance, Elite HP. So.
You're starting the question if you let me tune your car.
Mark Beatty in the house. What's going on, man? If you guys haven't checked out the We Love to Race virtual trade show that Mark and his team are putting on out there in Denver, Colorado, one of the most gorgeous places on the planet, some of the most incredible human beings on the planet. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. I watched a couple of them last night and another one this morning. Really cool effort put together. Like, it's real thinking outside of the box, in my opinion, trying to put on a trade show. And it's funny because Mark has actually talked to me about this for years, doing this. And it's crazy that COVID and coronavirus kind of provided him the opportunity to pull the trigger on this thing. So they just put together for some people they may have heard of once. Yeah, man, we do a ton of video production stuff. We've actually just pivoted outside of motorsports for the first time, working with some really large scale contracting companies down here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So it's, yeah, man, it's exciting times, brother. Exciting times. I would let Murder Tundra tune my golf cart, like throw a plug in it or put it on the battery charger. But yeah, no, I'm just giving him a hard time. But no, if everything went according to plan, I would rent a car from like Elite Motorsports or something like that for a few races, and do what I can to. For me, I think it just adds to. I love the. I mean, if you look at like stick and ball sports, man, the best analysts, the best commentators are always people who've played the game. Right. And I've raced a lot of street car stuff. I've street raced more than I care to admit. I've done all sorts of bracket racing and things like that, but I throw my hat into the in some pro drag racing. I'll drive anything, wheels, skids, wings, whatever you got. Colton Jordan, great to see you. I took in a day at the American Drag Racing League's return to the Texas Motorplex this past weekend. Saw the whole ADRL crew. Mel Roth, super welcoming. I appreciate his warm welcome and chatting my ear off about all the things that they've got going on. Very exciting thing. Hell of a turnout of cars. Incredible turnout of fans on Saturday night. I don't know. What can you say about the American Drag Racing League, Kenny Nolling, Mel Roth, and their ability to put people in the stands on a consistent basis, man. Hell of a turnout. Great racing. Jason Hamstra takes the win over Bubba Stanton. Great to see some of, fast door slammer racing's, some big names from Pro Extreme Racing back in the thick of things. Jason Hamstra has a killer program right now. There's no doubt about that, but there was a ton of great cars there. The Brandt family, who else did it was so great to get to see the Philpotts. I love these guys. Incredible human beings, San Antonio group. So there's some of my Texas homies. Of course, getting to see my buddy Mick Snyder there, tuning cars, working on Brandon Lewis's Pro Mod, as well as Chad Sheffield's Pro Mod. I mean, there's a ton of great cars there. Really, there were. And it was, the energy was palpable. People were fired up and excited, and all those things that Kenny Nolling is known for, the winner's circle, the yelling and screaming, all those things, the production that he brings. Hey, man, it was there in spades. Absolutely. It was great to see everybody. Great to see you, Colton. I'm going to Ducks race. Absolutely. I'm not going to No Mercy. I will be in Dallas for the NHRA national event. It's now my hometown race, so I can't really miss it. I've got a ton of people coming out to the racetrack to support the sport and be a part of it. So what's hotter right now, Radial versus the World or Pro 275? Pro 275 by a country mile, in my opinion. I think that there's just more movement there. There's more energy there. There's more. I talk about this all the time, every single Wednesday. But the dream is still alive there in Pro 275 racing. And now, don't get me wrong, it's getting out of control in a hurry. But I look at RVW and the level that it's arrived at. It's tough, man. I mean, to think about what's required to go run in the 350s with a radial tire car at some of the weights these cars run at is it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the inexperienced. It's not for the fresh face. It's not for the new team. So Phil Schuler has said this right here on this show many moons ago. It's been a few years ago, but he talked about, the people that have success on radials race on radials a lot. And I look at the teams that have success, and I see teams that race a lot. And and this is a brand of drag racing that's really a 2, 3, 4 times a year deal. And it's consistently the guys that win are the guys that go to the most races, the guys that race as many weekends. I mean, I'm obviously talking about the likes of Stevie Fast Jackson, a pro level drag racer. It's a wild scene over there in RVW right now. I think it's an interesting. How fast the nitrous cars have gotten. I think Luis De Leon behind the wheel of Brian Shaw's Camaro, the Chili Willy's Camaro, that car dipping into the 350s in the 8th mile, a nitrous combination, kind of coming out of nowhere to do it. It was massively impressive. I think the doors open for more of those cars to kind of show up and show out. But the lack of twin turbo Hemi cars or twin turbo cars really in general is something that kind of weighs on me. I wonder if it's not time to try to, open the rules up enough to bring some of those cars back that have gone away that we're not seeing as much of, and maybe inspire some people to come out and try to shake things up. But it's a very, very interesting thing right now. The RVW conversation, it can go a lot of different directions, but I look at Pro 275 right now as the hottest thing in radial tire racing. And we'll end on this note. Zach Barklage behind the wheel at the Motorplex this past weekend. I'm a Missouri-born dude, right? So the Barklage family, Mark, Cody, Zach, I am the biggest of fans of the Barklages. Those kids were my heroes when I was growing up. We're not too far apart age-wise. I actually think Zach and I might be the exact same age. But I idolized those kids. They were doing what I wanted to do, racing NHRA Pro Mod in the mid-2000s. During a really heady time for it. They were racing ADRL one weekend, NHRA the next weekend. They had screw blowers, roots blowers. They had a couple cars, family-based deal, racing with their dad. Just an incredible story. These are some guys that hang sheetrock in the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, and they're just great, hardworking people. And it's so cool to see Zach Barklage jump behind the wheel of a Pro Extreme car without having driven one in several years and do a phenomenal job, an absolutely phenomenal job. It was great to see him back behind the wheel. I'm a big fan of the Barklage boys. The first time I saw Zach tear apart a Lenco to change gear sets, I was just like, this is a young kid. There's just not, this would have been in 2005. I remember it vividly, watching Zach yank a 3-speed Lenco out of their car and turn it on its side and start taking the cases off to rebuild this thing. And I just thought about how cool it was to see a young man in his early 20s, not only driving a 3-second capable 8th mile Pro Mod, but working on it. Right, getting his hands dirty, and I couldn't be a bigger fan of the Barklage boys. So, really cool to see Zach back out there behind the wheel. And thank you guys all so much for joining us every Wednesday, the #1 place on the internet to talk drag racing. All these comments, all this engagement makes all the difference in the world. We love to know what you guys think. We love to have this conversation with you. Remember, we love to hear your questions. So if you have something that you want us to talk about on this show, please shoot us an email, wes@dragillustrated.com, send a message to the Facebook page, send a message to our Instagram page, post a comment on YouTube. Remember, right now we're rapidly trying to grow our Drag Illustrated YouTube channel, so please go watch the videos, go subscribe, go click to get notifications anytime we upload a video. I've got a slew of them that are uploading right now as we speak that will be available later today and the rest of the weekend. So please dive into the YouTube channel. That is where a lot of our video content will live as we move forward. We're actually getting ready to roll out a whole bunch more really cool video stuff that's, a little bit off the beaten path, different than what we typically do. So thank you guys so much for being a part of this. I love each and every one of you. Love the sport of drag racing. It is the great American motorsport. Go tell your friends. I'll see you next Wednesday.